Great. So welcome to episode 4 of the Wirecast, and today I'm joined by Pete Astley. Welcome, Pete.
Good morning, James. Yeah, really good to be here. And you're going to ask me now about what I do in the foundation.
I am indeed. What is it, Pete, you do in the foundation?
Yeah, since September, James, I've been working as the Community Rugby League Club Development Officer, and that's a new post that we initiated in the foundation last year, in September last year. And the primary role is to get a real understanding of how the community clubs operate on the ground, what makes them tick, their strengths, their weaknesses, and to assess them against some criteria that I've developed to make sure we identify areas for improvement and development. And the foundation is doing that in all 8 clubs across the town. And hopefully by the time that I complete this work in 2 years' time, we'll have taken the clubs on a bit of a journey of improvement. So that's, driving me forward, loving it. It's great to get an understanding of what's happening on the ground. This trophy's played a part in that too, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But absolutely loving the work I'm doing at the moment.
Sounds like a fascinating role to kind of be involved in, Pete. So in terms of your experiences of rugby league, what's brought you to this point that now you're kind of working for the foundation to help those clubs? You've got a rich history within the game. I just wondered if you could just give us a little bit of an overview of your involvement from a young person.
Absolutely. I mean, I love the game of rugby league. It's certainly something that has been really, really important to my family back over the years. My granddad played county rugby. My uncle played county rugby, and I was fortunate enough to when I went to university, play for the British Students Rugby League team on the first tour to New Zealand back in 1986, and then ended up playing rugby union for 5 years, which is something I don't readily admit, but actually, everyone has to bear their sometimes, and I think. But what it did teach me is rugby is a great game, full stop. But actually, my forte was rugby league. Back in my mid-20s, I moved back up north to play rugby league again, and was fortunate enough to play both for a Great Wolston Rovers side, but county honours, and also captain the Barlowbrook Great Britain team, which is a massive honour. And play with some fantastic players like our very own Neil Kelly, who was probably one of the best players I've ever played with, but now equally as dedicated when it comes to promoting the game. And that's what I've seen. I saw through Neil, the work that he was doing in the foundation was a real inspiration, and something I wanted to be part of, and came onto the board about 10 years ago, the board of trustees, to help support the foundation. And when Terry O'Neill sadly passed away 4 years ago, took over as chair from Terry. Really, really difficult job to follow Terry into Terry's footsteps, but help the foundation through some really difficult periods. COVID was incredibly difficult, as it was for many organisations, and in doing that work, I always really expressed my desire to help support the community game, and I felt the foundation was really strongly placed to do that. And we had an idea, Lee Mitchell, Neil Kelly, myself, we had some ideas around how we could do that. Our ideas about who we could get into post never came to fruition. So I think it was Mitch and Neil behind the scenes, conspired with a plan to get me doing this work. And I can remember the phone call from Mitch, and you know what? It took a second to agree. It was such a great opportunity. Reluctantly had to step down as chair of the foundation, which was something I really didn't want to do, but had to do for this role. And ever since then, felt it's absolutely fantastic work. Really loving it, and really happy to be making a difference. Hopefully, in 1-2 years' time, when some of the kind of the things that we're doing now start to come to fruition, because this is a lot about buildings, around development. We'll see the amateur clubs recognising that the foundation can play a real part in their improvement.
I mean, you mentioned there the community game, obviously a great part of your heritage as well. Yeah. From what you've seen in this role so far, what state's the community game in?
I think the community game is in a very strong state. What we have are some incredibly skilled, dedicated volunteers who every week create the opportunity for hundreds of people to play the game. And if some of our clubs were businesses, they would be big businesses because they have hundreds of members signed on, and it's not, it's a thankless task trying to provide opportunities for all of those players, whether it's under sixes all the way through to open age, and they do that incredibly well. But I'm also aware that they've got real challenges as well. The demand on facilities has never been greater. We're having to recruit more and more volunteers. There are issues around safeguarding. Life is more complex now, James. I know yourself. You're a real driver of the safeguarding agenda, and it's really important. But all of these things have been added on to clubs since I played. I do make it more complicated now when you think about it. It's not just about letting some kids run on the pitch on a Sunday morning. There's a whole infrastructure behind that. And dare I say, sometimes our clubs have not been able, for instance, to tap into the funding opportunities that are out there. Rugby league's always been the poor relation in sports. And I think the time has come to us to kind of, reflect on that, to make sure it's not seen as a burden that we always accept, but something that helps us to drive forward improvement in the game. And I'm confident if we can tackle some of the issues that affect our teams, the common issues, like how they're governed, how they're financed, things like, access to facilities, access to external funding, all the things that other sports seem to take for granted, but not necessarily strong in rugby league. So if I can do some work in improving that side of the game, then we'll make them even stronger, James.
So, I mean, you've mentioned it there, Pete, the role of the community clubs in terms of providing that exit route from schools into continuing playing opportunities there. And again, you mentioned our wonderful kind of trophy that's sat here. And I want to ask you a little bit around kind of the significance of this in terms of generating those players for the future. So just wanted you to kind of give us a little bit of an overview really of what this trophy is, and kind of who is involved in participating for it under our Cheshire Fire Rescue Service Sevens competition, and also kind of what this particular competition means to you, and kind of your involvement in it, kind of now or previously as well. So if you could just give us a little bit of a flavour of that.
Positive history, yeah, absolutely, James. Yeah, I mean, this is the Ashton Trophy, the famous Ashton Trophy, which was presented to the Warrington Rugby League Club back in 1892. So, a fantastic piece of history. And a great example of how the foundation is cherishing the heritage of the town. The foundation has been the custodian of this now for a number of years, and is actually now putting it to really good use as being the trophy to play for in the Fire Sevens, which is great to see. Prior to that, this was played for by junior school rugby league teams in a 13-a-side competition, a knockout competition every season. And if you look at some of the names on here, there's some, going back to 1955, Alderman Bolton Primary were the first winners. Looking back in 1975, Bruce won the trophy for the first ever time. And I have to say, it's now revealing my age, James. I played in that game. I was only one at the time, joking aside. But Bruce won it back then. If we look here, Bruce 1977, our very own Simon Moran, who's on the board at the club and done so much for the game. He played in that game back in 1977. So absolutely fantastic history to this trophy. And again, epitomises, what's all that's good about junior rugby. And you're right, the foundation do a hell of a lot. They go into lots of schools. I think nearly every school in Warrington receives some foundation input in terms of helping to develop the players of tomorrow, both in terms of interest in playing, but also in terms of spectating and actually being part of this wonderful sport. And some of those actually go into our community clubs. And what we're trying to do is to help that crossover from school into clubs. And in doing so, they will then become, hopefully, the players, the internationals of the future. But in this trophy now, we're using this for the Fire Sevens. And the Fire Sevens are something the foundation has coordinated now for a number of years. And it's a brilliant competition. Warrington, Cheshire Fire and Rescue Service, we're really, really grateful for their support, because they actually see the benefit of getting young people playing sport and the impact that has. Unfortunately, they've been able to sponsor this Sevens Trophy for the last few years now, and this year we've got 32 teams from 32 schools in Warrington playing. And we have 2 rounds of 16 that will take place in May and June, and then the finals in July. And what this does is it allows some of our 8, 9, 10, 11-year-olds to play on the pitch out here. And I think we sometimes take for granted how important that is in people's lives. I remember the first time I played at Wilder School when I was a kid. Magical experience to be out there where your heroes played. And I think the same is true. And for them to be out here playing in front of big crowds before the games is a great thing. So we're really great that we've got this now associated with the Fire Sevens, and it continues that history, which is so important to the foundation.
Yeah, and again, you mentioned there about the importance of getting rugby league into the school environment. You're a parent yourself. Have your children had some input from the foundation in their school when it comes to experiencing the sport for the very first time?
Absolutely, and both my girls have participated in the foundation sessions at school. Both loved it. Kyle, who delivers the sessions at my daughter's school, I think is more of a celebrity in my house than I am, my youngest was really taken with the work that they were doing, and it stimulated them into asking questions about the game. 2 girls, but it doesn't matter now. It's not about boys playing sport. It's very much an inclusive sport, and probably one of the most inclusive sports there is. Strangely enough, it's one of the toughest, but one of the most inclusive. And so my youngest daughter's friend, really into rugby, associated with Crossfields. You can see that career now mapping out in rugby, and that's really, really good to see. So I, again, try my best. I don't overface my children with rugby league. I love the game, but the key thing is for them to do what they wish, and realise their kind of potential. Whether it's netball or rugby or football, it doesn't matter, but it's great that there are opportunities. And I have to say that the work the foundation does create so many potential opportunities for young people to get into the game, which is really important.
Yeah, and again, I think that's a really important point you've made there around the schools and the role they play in that. I've been witness to many a competition on the pitch, and the excitement that's generated through this particular competition, not just when they come here and play, but in the weeks and months leading up to that, is incredible. And again, we've had some examples of first team players who've played in this competition when they've been in our primary schools over the years as well. I guess kind of for me moving forward in terms of the exit strategy for young people playing in this particular competition. You mentioned there around the importance of those rugby league clubs. How do those rugby league clubs recruit individuals, and what does that relationship look like with this particular competition, or the schools involved in this particular competition? But also in terms of the wider relationship of recruiting those young players who maybe experience that sport through the foundation activities or the foundation schools coaching. How do we bridge the gap between school and community?
I mean, that's a really good question, James, because I think certainly in Warrington we are a rugby league town, got a strong rugby league heritage, but not everybody who lives here is from a rugby league background, and I think that's sometimes we overlook. And we do have a lot of people that come from other parts of the country. We've seen a big influx in Hong Kong families moving to Warrington over the last couple of years now. So we've got lots of young people here who've never really experienced the sport. They're not part of the kind of Cosa Nostra of rugby league going back generations like I am, but actually love the game and want to be involved. So playing sport initially at primary school is a really important step, and that's the first step in developing their interest, developing a desire to want to play. And our job then is to try to link those young people at primary schools with our community clubs. And the work we're doing through the contact that we have with the schools. We have a festival, and today we have a festival taking place at Banky, where the cluster schools around Banky are all playing for a mini festival. Despite the weather, I'm sure they're having a great time. And hopefully by bringing the schools together with the clubs, we can start to make those interfaces for people that ordinarily would have a little bit lacking in confidence in terms of making that first step. You and I know, James, sometimes, and you see that with Offload. Offload's an amazing program, but for some, it's getting them to take that first step that's the most important part of it. And I think the same is true here. So we're doing more and more with schools. I'm thinking of how we can improve the dialogue between schools and community clubs so that we have that natural pathway between the two. That then creates problems for the community clubs in terms of facilities and numbers of coaches. So you're creating issues, but they're good problems to have. And they're the things that we'll be looking to help with. Get the recruits coming in, improve the facilities, improve things like respect at the games. And it's great to see that, the reports from games this season so far have been really positive. Very, very few incidents of, abusing coaches, referees and stuff like that, which is where I want it to be. And that creates then, a real family of rugby league, which these people are then very welcome to come in. I think as a foundation, there's more we can do with groups like our Hong Kong community, and it was great to see lots of Hong Kong families in the West Stand at a recent Kids for a Quid game. I know we've got them coming up this weekend. I know, the club are really pushing for us to help and support our Polish community as well. Again, we've seen a really fantastic player at Leeds, Polish heritage coming through and being one of the top players in Super League, which is great. And I'm sure, if, you never know, in 5-10 years' time, we may have someone who was born in Hong Kong representing the club. And how brilliant would that be? So lots of work to do, and this is why we see this as a really important part of what we do to make those links, James.
Yeah. I know it's a bit unfair of me to ask Pete. No, I probably already know the answer, but can I push you for a prediction on this year's winner of this wonderful trophy?
Are you going to push me? But it'd be too. Diplomacy has to be my answer there, James. I'm sorry. I think some of the schools have done really well, but it sometimes surprises us that a school that hasn't necessarily had a good, track record in the competition can come to the fore. And I'm hoping we see a new winner this year. That's all I can say.
Okay, so what you're basically saying is you hope Rugby League's the winner.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks for your time today, Pete. It's been really, really interesting.
No, thank you, James. Thank you.
No problem.
Thank you.